Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Tax Matters. I am Pearl Naimaka. On today's episode of the program, we are bringing you the second part of the National Tax Debate 4.0, powered by the Tax Club, University of Lagos. You will recall that the topic of the debate was and still is, should the rate of value-added tax in Nigeria go up from its current 5%? In the first part of the debate, we had two young men slugging it out, and we're sure that you remember the fireworks emanating from the stage. By sheer coincidence, the two co-debaters of today are both young ladies.
So we're moving into the second round of the debate very quickly. And of course, don't forget that we'll also have the Conservative Party go against the Liberal Party. Please, if you're not too tired and your hands are not too busy, please put them together for Team A and Team J.
My fellow Nigerians, once upon a time, I was a slave to the wild thought that there should be an increase in the rate of VAT in Nigeria to 10%. Let me tell you my story. I was once an innocent student, like most of you seated here today in the classroom, when my tax lecturer, Professor Amaka Njoku, said, and I quote, "The only way for Nigeria to experience economic growth is if there is an increase in the rate of VAT from 5% to 10%. And at that moment, I became a fanatic, hooked on the flimsy fantasy that the only answer to Nigeria's economic problems was for there to be an increase in the rate of VAT. She sold me dreams that if there is an increase in the rate of VAT, it will lead to an increase in the revenue in the nation, a reduction in the consumption of imported goods, and that if countries like Finland, Netherlands, and India have done it, what are we waiting for?" It was a taxation garden of Eden. But on one fruitful day, I ate the forbidden fruit of knowledge and I saw the light, that it was all a fantastic fantasy. So, I understand clearly why my fellow candidates will stand here today to tout the same nebulous beliefs. After all, we are all patriots trying to save our beloved country. But Professor Amaka disappointed me. Don't let them disappoint you too. On this note, I would like to extend my courtesies to the panelists, our honorable guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and my fellow candidates and patriotic Nigerians. Standing before you is Morenikeji Akinseye, a conservative candidate representing Team A, here to lead you to the light at the end of the tunnel as to why the rate of VAT should be maintained at 5% in Nigeria. But for those who are unaware, VAT stands for an abbreviation which means value added tax. And this is a tax that is payable on the consumption of goods and services, whether they are by government agencies, individuals, or businesses. And the enabling law, which provides for the rate of VAT at 5% in Nigeria, is the Value Added Tax Act, Cap 48 of the LFN 2004. Ladies and gentlemen, I support taxation and I support change. But what I do not support is a drastic increase in the rate of VAT, when this change will lead to Madam Bosse, a single mother of two, struggling to pay her rent, or Mr. Sunday, a mechanic, struggling to pay his son's school fees because the new rate of VAT is snatching the little change left from their hands. Shouldn't we as Nigerians change to the point where we do not just simply support change for the risk of change? My fellow candidates will say today that there are reasons why we should make this change. Let us examine them under a microscope. First of all, they will tell us that it would lead to economic growth as it did in other countries like Finland and Netherlands. So let's take a quick quiz. Which country has a population where 61% lives on less than $1 a day? Finland or Nigeria? Which country has an unemployment rate of 18.8%? Finland or Nigeria? And which country recently came out of an economic recession? Finland or Nigeria? Thus showing that what is good for the goose is poison for the gander. Furthermore, they would tell us that it would lead to an increase in the rate of revenue in our country. But in the wisest words of Winston Churchill, for a nation to tax itself into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket trying to lift himself from the handle. In other words, it is stupidity. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I would examine the negative effects of an increase in the rate of VAT. First of all, it would reduce the purchasing power of already powerless Nigerian citizens. Secondly, an increase in the rate of VAT would lead to an increase in the inflation rate in our country, as different businesses will see it as an avenue to hike the prices of goods and services, as reported by the Guardian newspaper on the 6th of February 2016. And lastly, consumption taxes are regressive taxes. VAT is a consumption tax. Therefore, VAT is a regressive tax, and it has been proved that an increase in such regressive taxes would lead to only a disadvantage for low-income earners and families. So the continuous and ongoing agitation for an increase in the rate of VAT, despite public outcry, is a symptom of a larger Nigerian problem, where the government is seeking to find solutions for our tax issues like a desperate barren woman. Today, self-assessment, a panacea. Tomorrow, VAT, a messiah. And now, an increase in the rate of VAT, salvation? Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot, as a nation, simply stand and encourage the increase in the rate of VAT when it would lead to the detriment of the various low-income earners in our country. As at the first quarter of 2018, the value-added tax had accrued 270 billion naira, which was a 22% increase from what it had generated in the last quarter of 2017, clearly showing us that the VAT rate at 5% is working. So why fix what is not broken? At this point, I will prefer recommendations as to why we should leave the VAT rate at 5% but work on its implementation. First of all, the first schedule of the Value-Added Tax Act provides for exempted goods which should not be taxed to VAT. But these goods are merely described as medical services and basic food products, but they are not clearly defined. If there is a clear definition for these goods, it would grant the government the avenue to tax every other good or service in the nation. Secondly, the base of value-added tax should be expanded to include online products of goods and services on platforms such as Facebook and Instagram, which is the norm of today. Thirdly, the FIRS should work on ensuring that all businesses in Nigeria are registered for the purpose of VAT. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, the FIRS should see that the informal sector is also taxed based on VAT. Thank you.
Do you provide goods and services? Then you must answer these important questions. Are you registered for VAT? Do you charge VAT on the goods and services you provide? Do you keep records of all your transactions? Do you file VAT returns? Do you remit VAT collected to government coffers? If your answer to any of these questions is no, then you are breaking the law. The law demands total compliance. Therefore, you must register for VAT. You must charge VAT on goods and services. You must file VAT returns. And you must remit all VAT collected on behalf of government within 21 days to the bank nearest to you. To do otherwise is a crime punishable everywhere in the world. VAT is prescribed by the law. Do the right thing. Collect and pay VAT. This message is from the FIRS. It pays to pay your tax.
From one Amazon to another, from no to yes.
My fellow Nigerians, my name is Ilamosie Kenimo from the Liberal Party, speaking affirmatively on the topic, should Nigeria increase its value-added tax rate to 10%? Now, I know that I stand before you this morning an unpopular peddler of a very viable solution. Nobody wants to increase taxes. Nobody likes increasing taxes, but increase taxes we must if we're going to survive. Now I tell you that in Nigeria, apart from the various problems that we face, we must clarify the question in today's debate. And so I ask you, fellow Nigerians, to set aside your emotions and help me to clarify the question in today's debate. The question in today's debate is not whether Nigeria can tax, is not whether Nigeria can generate revenue from other sources. The question in today's debate is not whether the taxes that are gotten from an increase in VAT may be misappropriated. The question in today's debate is not whether Nigeria's tax system could be more effective, because the answer to all these questions are yes. The question in today's debate is whether Nigeria should tax its consumption appropriately by increasing value-added tax to 10%. And I dare say that we should. Nigeria, first of all, has the lowest VAT rate in the world at 5%, when other countries average between 15 and 25%. It should also be noted that we have the lowest VAT to GDP ratio in the world, which is 6%. I would also like you to know that there is an optimum level that tax must reach for it to be effective. And if the minimum percent worldwide is 15% for it to be effective, then we are under-taxing our consumption. For my fellow Nigerians, allow me to convince you more. I'll be telling you why we're increasing VAT, how we'll be increasing VAT, who will be increasing VAT, when we'll be increasing VAT, and what the benefits are of increasing VAT in Nigeria. Now, as to the why, I will tell you that every smart government knows that there are only 4 ways in which you can generate revenue. The first way you can generate revenue is through your civil service. But everybody knows that the Nigerian civil service is decrepit, and so it cannot be a viable option in today's debate. The second way you can generate revenue is through borrowing. And it would interest you to know that in the early 90s, Nigeria did in fact take an IMF loan. And it is because of that IMF loan, which took us over 10 years to pay, that we devalued our naira several times. So that clearly cannot be the solution. It would also interest you to know that just last month, Nigeria took yet another IMF loan to the sum of $2.1 billion. And in August, this month, the next month, we are still running at a deficit. So that's clearly not the answer. Our third option is to use our resources and sell them. But everybody knows that Nigeria is a mono economy. Oil is our baby. And everybody knows that the prices of oil have dropped 70% in the first quarter of 2018, as was reported by Trading Economics. So this cannot be a viable solution. The only solution to a smart government left is taxation. And this was aptly captured by the former FIRS chairman, Sunday Ogungbeson, when he stated in a recent interview that Nigeria's current revenue cannot sustain its expenditure. He stated that we must look to non-oil revenue sources, and he concluded by stating that taxation is the future. So if taxation is the future, why specifically VAT? Now I'll tell you that we cannot increase taxes in any other sector in Nigeria, because this will lead the economy into a freefall, and that's what we're trying to avoid in today's debate. So we are taxing VAT because it is the most viable. And I'll have you know that VAT is imposed on consumption of goods and services. Now, for the goods aspect, everybody knows that Nigeria is a consuming nation. We import more than we export, we spend more than we save, and we consume more than we produce. So if nothing is sure in Nigeria apart from debt and taxes, it is sure that Nigerians will buy something. We will continue to buy goods. So this is a continuous stream of income for government if we can tax it proportionately. For the services industry, it would interest you to note that last year, in 2017, the services industry generated 60.1% of Nigeria's GDP. That is more than half of Nigeria's GDP. And it's also rated to be one of the fastest growing economies in the world at 21.7% growth every single year. If this does not convince you, I would also like to let you know that mobile services and internet services are also included. So Airbnb, Uber, Udala, Konga, Best Nigeria are all services, and they can be taxed. So if technology is the future and taxation is its partner, then an increase in VAT is the only time machine that we can use to get there. Now, my fellow Nigerians, allow me to tell you exactly how we plan on increasing these taxes. We'll be using international best practices. Japan, between 2012 to 2015, increased its value-added tax from 5% to 10%, just like Nigeria. And so we'll be using Japan's model, but we'll be doing this in 5 years instead of 3 years like Japan. We'll be increasing taxes 3% in the first year, then we'll take a three-year break and increase taxes 1%, then we'll take another 2-year break and increase taxes 1%, bringing us to a total of 5 years and a 5% increase in taxes. Now, to further convince you, I will tell you that because we know that the economy will go into a free fall after we increase taxes to 3%, we are using 5 years to be able to recover the economy while minimally increasing taxes. I would also let you know that before we can increase taxes, we first have to amend the tax laws. And to amend tax laws, that takes an average of 2 to 4 years in Nigeria. But within those 2 to 4 years, we do not plan on sleeping. We plan on doing serious mobilization of forces and serious publicity to let the average Nigerian, average consumer know that an increase in VAT does not necessarily mean an increase in the prices of goods. We'll also be letting them know through the SOE, that is Standard Organization of Nigeria, and the Consumer Protection Agency, so that they can mobilize to ensure that the standard of goods in Nigeria do not drop and people do not pay disproportionately for their food products and other services. We will also do this by networking with other key sectors, such as the ICTRD and the FIRS, to ensure that this tax policy is tight. So allow me, my fellow Nigerians, to tell you exactly why this will benefit you and not in fact harm you. It will interest you to note that, as stated by my opponent, Schedule 1 of the VAT Act contains a long list of tax exemptions that cover the average Nigerian's basic needs from cradle to grave. Now, why this is so interesting is because the FIRS has an info circular 9701 on VAT that clearly defines all the items that are exempt. So it will interest you to know that baby products are exempt, your education is exempt, your health services are exempt, your transportation is exempt, agriculture is exempt, exportation is exempt. So these are the basic needs. But that might not even interest you because everybody knows that man must shop. So I will tell you that basic foods are exempted, and basic foods are defined as unprocessed food products, whether or not they are packaged. And they listed it there. That's rice, beans, eggs, all the basic food that the average Nigerian consumes on a daily basis is exempted. So this policy clearly works. Please vote for us in 2019. Thank you very much.
Now, question time. The debaters took on each other.
You spoke of revenue growth as being the final effect of an increase in the rate of VAT. Now, I'd like to remind you that one of the basic canons of taxation is fairness. And I've gone to say that if we increase the rate of VAT in Nigeria, it is going to prove highly unfair to a large sector of the economy, that is low-income earners and the poor. So how exactly do you expect these people to survive in the face of such an unfair policy? Thank you very much. So I would like Nigerians to know that as part of our policy, we plan on reducing income taxes by 5%. And why this is very smart is because income taxes currently start from 7% and withholding tax is 10%. So if we can reduce income taxes by 5%, this will mean that we are reducing the amount of money that we take from Nigerians' income. But then if we increase VAT, it means that we'll be able to sustain the same tax rate. And then since we're taxing only, since basic food items and basic services are not being taxed, that means that the average Nigerian will only be spending money on luxuries, technically. So if you can afford luxuries, then you can afford to be taxed for the luxuries. And we are not taking out of your income. We're taking out of the money that you have deemed you can spend anyhow. So if you can spend anyhow, then we should be able to tax it. That is our solution to the problem. I would like to ask you, because you have alleged that an increase in the tax in the VAT rate will automatically mean that there is inflation in Nigeria. So I want you to give the people of Nigeria a step-by-step analysis as to how an increase in VAT will cause inflation for them. I believe you should be aware of the fact that inflation means basically when the prices of goods and services in a country are hiked. Yes? You increase VAT to 10% as opposed to 5%. Today, you buy this biro for 20 naira, I suppose, and when you increase the rate of VAT to 10%, businesses will seize this opportunity to hike this price from as low as 20 naira to, let's say, 60 naira. And this will have a ripple effect on every product in the economy. So this biro is something very minimal, but imagine the things in the economy that are already priced at a high cost. So imagine this ripple effect throughout the entire economy. Are you trying to deny the fact that it's not going to be to the detriment of Nigerians?
And from the judges.
In the course of your policy measures, you talked about taxation of the internet services. Could you please give us step by step how you're going to do this?
For taxation of internet services, it is commonly acknowledged that although they are ISP providers, they must have physical offices, and that any business that operates in Nigeria must in fact pay company income tax. So these companies are registered in Nigeria, and there's a database for registration because all of them have to be registered under the Company and Allied Matters Act. So it is simply a matter of going to these companies and asking them to remit the amount of money that they generate yearly, and then we'll deduct for them, if they can, the amount of taxes that they ought to pay or the amount of VAT that is
taking oath. You are interested in keeping VAT at 5%. What makes you so convinced that you can still render services that the populace want with that 5% VAT?
Thank you very much, Ma, for that question. I am so convinced that with the rate of VAT still at 5%, the government will still be able to achieve its aim, because my entire argument is based on the fact that Nigeria's problem is not the rate of our VAT, but the other issues that are clogging and pressing down how much we can generate with our 5% VAT rate. We have so many issues in place, like the issue of businesses not being registered with the FIRS for the purpose of remitting value-added tax. We also have the issue of not taxing the informal sector to value-added tax. We also have revenue leakages on internet platforms that offer goods and services that do not pay value-added tax. So we have so many avenues where our revenue is simply leaking out. And if we clog these leakages, our revenue is going to boost from not that 270 billion naira to about 500 billion if we can bring an end to every other problem that is killing the collection of our VAT. Because if we increase the rate of VAT to 10%, it does not change the fact that Nigerians are still going to evade taxes and are still going to refuse to register with the FRS and are still going to refuse to pay taxes even though they are offering services on an online platform. So the problem does not lie with the rate, ma'am. The problem lies with every other issue that is killing the progress of VAT in Nigeria. Thank you.
That's done with. It was time for the judges to announce the winners of the 4.0 edition of the National Tax Debate.
We had to judge them on the content, clarity, appearance, time management, and questions answered. We'll have 4 participants, but we have a tie. So we want to call the 2 people and ask 1 question. We have a new judge who will help us judge the answer to the question, just 1 question. So please, we want the representative of A and J. They both have a tie.
How would you support small and medium enterprises to ensure compliance with the VAT law, retaining it at 5%?
First of all, I would like to address the fact that the most important tool in life is knowledge. Therefore, as small and medium enterprises are being established, it is very important to enlighten them on what VAT is, how much the rate is, how it is to be paid, on what it is to be paid, so they have clarity as to every single thing that is associated with VAT. We also enlighten them about the penalties of not paying tax and how it can kill their businesses if they are caught. So as I said, knowledge is the most important tool, and if we give them this tool, it would lead them to greater heights. Thank you.
To the Liberal team, how would you convince small and medium enterprises to accept increase in VAT rate to 10%?
Thank you very much. As we stated in our speech earlier, the VAT increase will not be affecting the basic needs of every Nigerian. So we'll convince small and medium enterprises by telling them that it will bring them no additional cost, first of all. And then we'll also explain to them how it will not bring them any loss in revenue. Because we also stated that we'll be reducing income taxes. So that means people have more to spend. So if they are going to buy your products, they're going to buy your products. We're not going to be taking away from your consumer base because we are reducing the income tax. And so you have more money to spend. And then the VAT is not directly imposed on the businesses, but on the citizens. So the businesses, small and medium enterprises, technically speaking, do not have any problems in the increase of VAT.
That was to break the tie. At the end of it all, Team A came third, second place went to Team J, and Team I carried the day.
I was built to be the best, number one and nothing less. Lead me to my destiny. I have waited.
We're so happy. With these young ones, surely Nigeria's future is bright. But then we ask you, where do you stand? Should the rate of VAT in Nigeria go up from its current 5%? Call in, send us email, tweet at us. We thank you for watching. See you next week.